Hey everyone, this is David Brown with the migration update for April 3rd, 2023 from the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. There were nice southerly winds overnight, so I started out the day at sunrise at the Braddock Bay East Spit. I went to the Hawk platform around 8 a.m. and it was mostly sunny throughout the morning, and it did cloud over at some points in the afternoon and then especially towards the end of the day. Overall, the winds were moderate to strong from the southwest, although towards the end of the day they shifted more westerly and then eventually to a northwest wind. But overall, it was great conditions for migration with those favorable southwest winds and a fair amount of cloud cover to help us spot the birds. Here we have a red-bellied woodpecker, and we know it's a female because it does not have the orange extending all the way across the forehead. Here's a male wood duck flying past. Here's a rusty blackbird, and it was a really great day for rusty blackbirds. I think I estimated around 50, but with the amount of migration in the morning, there was probably a lot more. Sometimes it's just hard to pick them out. And if you're not familiar with this species, rusty blackbirds are one of the most declining songbird species in the United States, so it's kind of a special thing to see, and it's a species for concern. Here's a migrating group of 5 great blue herons. Here's a horned lark, and we had some decent-sized migrating groups of horned larks today. One group was about 50, had another group with 20 or 30, so seeing some good-sized groups compared to earlier in the season when we were just getting 1 or 2 or maybe 5 at a time. Here's a ring-billed gull, but maybe you'll notice something, that it's missing its tail. So it's just kind of a big flying wing with a head. We're still seeing a pretty good number of migrating killdeer. We had about a dozen of them today. It was another great day for turkey vultures. We're right in the peak time for turkey vulture migration, and we had over 2,000 again today. So really cool to see these come through. And as the hawk counter, I like them because they're big and dark and easy to count. In a few weeks when we get all the broadwings, then my job becomes a lot more difficult. Here's an adult female northern harrier, and we know it's an adult female because of how much streaking it has underneath. It goes all the way down to the belly and the undertail coverts. And we also see a lot of marking in the patagial area as well that juveniles would not show. We saw some migrating Bonaparte's gulls today, maybe around 15 or so. Not as many as we were seeing some days last week, but definitely still in the peak migration time for them. They kind of have a unique pattern to the wingtip. You can see the black is just at the very tip of the feather, so it's like a black bar, and the outer primaries are a lighter white color. And I even saw one today that had a completely black head, and we'll see more of those as we get further in the season and more of them enter breeding plumage. We watched this osprey grab a fish off of the bay and come straight towards us. And it kept coming and just came basically directly over the platform. And at its closest, I couldn't even fit the whole thing in the frame of the camera. That's how close it got. Here's an immature bald eagle, one that we would call a white belly. Here's another turkey vulture. And it always amuses me that turkey vultures have these big nostrils, and in a lot of photos you can see directly through the nostril and you can see the sky on the other side. Here's an adult Cooper's hawk with some kind of prey, or at least what's left of it. Notice that these white feathers here fluff out sometimes, and from the side you might mistake them for the white rump of a northern harrier, so that's just one thing to be aware of when you see Cooper's hawks. Here's another horned lark, posing very handsomely for us. Here's another adult Cooper's hawk. So from a photo like this, we can't really see much about the tail, but we do see that this bird has a rather large head. The raptor highlight of the day was when I spotted a golden eagle, and it was fairly distant off to our left, and it actually started to circle and got blown back, and a second golden eagle joined it. So we had the two golden eagles migrate through together, which was pretty cool. They didn't come terribly close, so the photos aren't very good, but it was nice to get a few more golden eagles for the season, especially with so many people on the platform. Here's an immature bald eagle coming up on 2 years old, and you can see the different length feathers in the wing. You have the retained juvenile feathers that are longer and paler, and then you have the darker feathers that have been replaced one time already. Here we have part of a group of turkey vultures, and it was really steady with vulture migration throughout most of the day, and most of the groups were right along the lake shore, so looking off to the right. And towards the end of the day, some of the groups did come more overhead, but it was mostly counting large groups of turkey vultures off to the right. Here's an adult red-tailed hawk. So we see those dark patagial bars and the belly band. And we know it's an adult because it has a dark trailing edge to the wing and a red tail. And this bird's on the more heavily marked end of the spectrum. You can see how dark and big the patagial bars and belly band are. Although this bird does have a pale throat, some of the more heavily marked red tails that we would see would have a dark throat. The more heavily marked individuals like this, we would sometimes classify as being part of the northern subspecies, or Abieticola, compared to the standard eastern subspecies that we see, or Borealis subspecies. So I'd probably classify this one as a northern. Here we have a nice look at the top side of an adult sharp-shinned hawk, and we see that sharp-shinned hawks have a hooded appearance rather than a capped appearance like Cooper's hawks have. And what that means, hooded appearance, is that the blue on top of the head goes all the way back across the neck and onto the back, whereas on a Cooper's hawk, the nape, which is the back of the neck, is a paler color. We also see that very squared off tail that most sharp-shinned hawks show, and it looks like this bird has a bit of a full crop, meaning that it has eaten recently. Here's the underside of the same bird, and you can see that the tail is very squared off because all of the tail feathers are the same length, which is a typical characteristic of a sharp-shinned hawk. And we know it's an adult because of the orange barring underneath. Here's a side view of a male American kestrel, our smallest falcon. Here's a juvenile sharp-shinned hawk. So again, we see that really squared off tail shape because all of the tail feathers are the same length. And we also see that it has a relatively small head compared to a Cooper's hawk. Here's a double-crested cormorant soaring. And yes, cormorants do soar. Some people see soaring cormorants and assume they're anhingas, which would be a mega rarity up here. But cormorants definitely soar. And this was the first day that we were really seeing bigger numbers of cormorants. We had about 50 today. So over the next few weeks, we'll see hundreds or maybe even thousands on some days. But this is the first day we've really noticed the numbers start to pick up. Here we have a juvenile red-shouldered hawk. So first of all, we see that the wings have pale crescents near the wingtips and sort of squared off wingtips rather than rounded or real pointy. So that's a typical wingtip shape for red-shouldered, and the pale crescents are one of the defining features of red-shouldered hawks. If you look in the patagial area, you notice that there's no patagial bars like a red-tailed hawk would show. It's just plain here in this area. And we also see that rather than having the belly band like red tails have, juvenile red shoulders have streaking that kind of starts on the upper breast and extends all the way down. On red tails, it's usually very clean on the upper breast, then a well-defined belly band. And the other thing about this bird that is a bit unusual is it has a forked tail. So it looks like it's maybe missing one or two tail feathers, and that's why it has that split tail appearance. That's not typical. That's just something happened to those feathers on this bird. It could be molt, but this time of year I wouldn't think that a juvenile like this would have started molting tail feathers. So not typical of what we see, but it's just something that you have to keep in mind sometimes. Birds don't always look perfect or like they do in the field guide. So just keeps things interesting. Here's another male American kestrel, and you can see on the top side they have sort of an orange back, and then the wings are blue and black. Here's another adult red-tailed hawk, and this one's more lightly marked than the one we saw earlier, but we still see those dark patagial bars and the belly band, and it's an adult, so it has the dark trailing edge to the wing and the red tail. Here's a juvenile sharp-shinned hawk, so we see that relatively squared off tail because the tail feathers are the same length, relatively small head. And this bird is banded, so I'd be interested to see if this was a bird that one of the banding stations caught in banded today. Here's the top side of a female American kestrel. So whereas the male was real orange on the back and had blue and black wings, the female is more just plain brownish on top with banding. Here's a very strange balloon that floated by today. Here's a belted kingfisher, and we know it's a female because of the brown markings. If I look at my eBird checklists from today, at the East Spit in the morning, I had 50 species. And from the platform for the Hawk Watch, I had 69 species. Looking at the HawkCount report for our migrant raptor totals, today we had 2,330 turkey vultures, 2 osprey, 13 bald eagles, 17 northern harriers, 97 sharp-shinned hawks, 11 Cooper's hawks. For Buteos, we had 17 red shoulders and 96 red tails, plus 1 light morph rough leg. We had 2 golden eagles. And for falcons, we had 20 American kestrels and 2 merlins, for a total of 2,608 migrating raptors today. We had 1 new species for the season, which was fish crow. And looking at the forecast for tomorrow, rain early and then cloudy with showers, high in the mid-40s, winds east-northeast at 10 to 20 miles per hour. So just because of the rain and that unfavorable wind direction, I would say that there won't be much raptor migration tomorrow. For Wednesday, we're looking at rain with thunderstorms by evening, high 72, so very, very warm. Winds are east shifting south at 10 to 20 miles per hour. So it's kind of hard to predict because for the morning, it's an easterly wind, which normally isn't a great wind direction for us. But then as we get into the afternoon, the winds are shifting around to the south, which is a good wind direction, but we'll have to see what happens with the rain and thunderstorms. So we'll have to keep an eye on Wednesday as we get closer. And for Thursday, it's looking overcast with a high in the low 50s. Winds west at 15 to 25 miles per hour with higher gusts possible. So might be a bit of migration that day. The wind's a little bit on the stronger side. Will make it a little uncomfortable for hawk watching, but it's an okay wind direction for us. So I would expect light to moderate migration. All right. Well, it was another great day at the Hawk Watch. Good to see so many people come out and enjoy a big flight. And I was happy that some people got to see the golden eagles. Looks like the next few days will be a little bit slow, but hopefully we'll have more good days coming up soon at the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. From Lyco Birds, this is David Brown. Thanks for watching.